The cold, empty void of space seemed endless, but even in this vast expanse, one threat stood out above all others: a rogue star. Massive, burning bright with an intensity that could scorch entire worlds, it was moving at an alarming speed toward an unsuspecting alien planet. This star wasn't just any natural phenomenon. It was a harbinger of doom for the peaceful civilization living on that world. In mere weeks, it would tear apart everything they knew, destroying their cities, their homes, their lives. The Galactic Council, a coalition made up of the most advanced civilizations in the universe, convened in an emergency session. Alien leaders from countless species gathered in a grand futuristic chamber. The walls shimmered with holograms of star maps, images of the rogue star's path, and the doomed planet. An eerie silence filled the room as each leader sat, eyes fixed on the screen displaying the fiery menace in motion. The situation was dire. No one had ever seen anything like this before. The star's power was unmatched by anything the Galactic Council's civilizations had ever encountered. Their best minds and their most advanced technologies had been brought to bear, yet all their efforts to stop or redirect the star had failed. The methods they had tried, massive gravitational shifts, attempts at creating artificial black holes to suck the star away, had no effect. It was like trying to stop a freight train with a paper wall. One by one, the alien leaders voiced their opinions. Some suggested they evacuate the planet's population, but that would take time they didn't have. Others proposed giving up entirely, acknowledging that there was no hope. For the first time in galactic history, the once invincible council was paralyzed with fear. As the tension reached a breaking point, a voice broke through the gloom. It was the voice of Commander Ethan Drake, Earth's representative, a seasoned war hero who had earned the respect of allies and enemies alike. Known for his unconventional thinking and never backing down from a challenge, Ethan stood in stark contrast to the anxious, defeated leaders of the council. The camera zoomed in on him. The light from the holographic screens glinted off his sharp features, revealing a man whose age and experiences had hardened his resolve. He was calm, collected, and yet a fire burned in his eyes. Ethan had been through battles and wars, but nothing like this. This was a fight for the very survival of a galaxy that had dismissed humanity as just another minor species. Yet here he was, standing with nothing but his courage and a plan that no one else had dared to offer. "Gentlemen," Ethan's voice was low but carried the weight of 1,000 battles. "There is one way to stop this star, but it will require all the courage humanity has to offer. We have the technology to do it, but it's never been tried on something this dangerous." The room fell into an uneasy silence. The eyes of the alien leaders narrowed. They had seen humanity's ingenuity before, but they had always considered humans primitive, unable to compete with the technological marvels of the other species. They had the power to create advanced AI, build colossal ships, and wield weapons of unimaginable destruction. How could humans, who barely knew how to control fire when they were first discovered, stand a chance against the forces of the universe? Ethan stood tall, undeterred by their doubts. "We'll build a fusion bomb, something capable of diverting the rogue star off its course. It's risky, and we'll have to deliver it into the heart of the star's path. But if we do it right, we can save that world and all those living on it." For a moment, the room was filled with disbelief. The alien leaders looked at each other as if unsure whether to laugh or cry. A fusion bomb, a human-made weapon. The idea seemed laughable to them. To them, humanity was still the wild child of the galaxy, with its rebellious streak and a long history of scraping by. They had not forgotten the many times humans had been underestimated in the past, only to somehow defy expectations. A taller alien leader, his face sharp and angular, leaned forward, shaking his head. "You cannot be serious, Commander. A fusion bomb, of all things. That's a suicide mission. Your species hasn't even mastered interdimensional travel yet. You expect us to believe that you can stop a star with such primitive means." Laughter rippled through the room. bitter and condescending. The other council members snickered, some shaking their heads in disbelief. This plan was doomed to fail. The thought that humans, with their relatively primitive technology, could possibly make a difference seemed beyond comprehension. Ethan remained standing, his face hardening. He didn't flinch. I understand your doubts. I've seen them before. But if you have any better ideas, I'm all ears. Otherwise, we're going to do this. We have no other choice. Earth has always been the underdog, and we've always had to fight against the odds. But we don't back down. We fight, and we win. A murmur spread across the room. Ethan's words, though simple, cut through the air with a force that surprised even the aliens. For a moment, they were silenced, as though his words had left them questioning their own abilities. Was it possible that humanity could succeed where they had failed? The council members exchanged uneasy glances, their doubts weighing heavily on them. Some of them had long looked down on Earth and its inhabitants. They saw humanity as raw and unpolished, too quick to act, too unpredictable. But what they didn't understand was the drive that fueled humans. They fought with everything they had, no matter the odds. And sometimes that was enough. Finally, the council leader spoke again, his voice tinged with reluctant acceptance. Very well. You may proceed with your plan, Commander. But know this. Should you fail, the galaxy will never forget your hubris. Ethan nodded without a hint of fear. Failure isn't an option. The cold hum of the space station echoed in the background as the team assembled in the mission briefing room. On the outside, the station glowed with the brilliance of 100 lights. But inside, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken tension. Earth's plan to save the galaxy was now in motion, and it had come down to a small group of soldiers, scientists, and engineers, people who had volunteered to take on the most dangerous mission in human history. Commander Ethan Drake paced slowly in front of a large holographic display, his mind running through every detail. Behind him, the crew members were gathered, all of them focused on the task at hand, but each person carried their own fears, hopes, and burdens. They knew the stakes. If they failed, they wouldn't just lose their lives. They would lose the respect of the universe. Worse, the galaxy would be doomed to destruction. All right, people. Ethan's voice cut through the air, firm yet comforting. I know none of you are here by accident. You've been chosen because you are the best of the best. You've proven yourselves time and time again. And now you have one more chance to show what humanity is capable of. The room went silent. The words weren't new, but they carried a weight that was impossible to ignore. This was no ordinary mission. It wasn't about following orders. It was about survival. It was about redemption. For each of them, for Earth, and for the galaxy. The rogue star wasn't just an external threat. It was a symbol of everything humanity had fought against. The team was carefully selected, each individual chosen not just for their technical skills, but also for their courage and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Among them was Sergeant Bonner, a seasoned soldier with a reputation for unwavering resolve. Bonner's past was a tragic one that no amount of time could ever fully erase. His wife and child had been killed during an alien raid on his hometown, a loss that had shaped him into the man he was today, a man who fought for justice, no matter what it cost. Standing beside Bonner was Sarah, a young recruit whose fire for revenge burned hotter than any weapon. Sarah had lost her older brother to an alien attack 2 years earlier, and though she was only 23, she had the heart of a warrior. The image of her brother's smiling face never left her mind, and now she was willing to risk everything to make sure no other family would suffer the same fate. Their eyes met across the room, and though no words passed between them, a silent understanding passed through. They were in this together, driven by the same shared loss, the same drive to fight back. For Bonner, this mission wasn't just about saving a planet. It was a way to finally find peace with the ghosts of his past. For Sarah, it was personal. She wasn't going to let her brother's death be in vain. She would fight to ensure humanity's survival. Bonner, Ethan called out, snapping the soldier from his thoughts. You're with the weapons team. Sarah, you're on tech support. Get those systems up and running. Understood, sir, Bonner replied with a curt nod, his eyes sharp. His expression was unreadable, but inside, a storm raged. He knew the odds. He had seen the destruction that came with alien attacks, but this was different. This was their one shot. He wasn't going to let them fail. Sarah, standing next to him, clenched her jaw. I won't let you down, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Ethan gave her a small, approving smile. I know you won't. You've got the grit. Now we just need to use it. The team split off, each heading toward their designated stations, where they would prepare for the mission of a lifetime. The high-tech hangar was a flurry of activity, the hum of machines and the whirring of robotic arms filling the air. The spacecraft they would be using, a sleek, cutting-edge design known as the Vanguard, stood at the center, bathed in the blue light from above. It was humanity's last line of defense, the one hope against the annihilation of an entire planet. As Bonner and Sarah made their way toward the ship, they passed the engineering bay, where robots were loading supplies onto the Vanguard. The spacecraft was equipped with the latest in human technology, cloaking devices that could make the ship invisible to any enemy sensors, AI-driven weapons that could take out a target before anyone even realized it was there, and advanced robotic suits that would protect the crew in the event of hostile encounters. All of this was new, experimental technology, developed in secret for this one moment in time. But as Sarah looked around, she couldn't shake the feeling that no amount of technology would make them invincible. They were humans, flesh and bone, and in the face of something as powerful as a rogue star, that didn't seem like much. Bonner noticed the look on her face and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're thinking too much, kid. Just focus on what we can control. I know, Sarah said softly, nodding. It's just, this is all so overwhelming. But I won't let anyone else die. Not if I can help it. Bonner's eyes softened as he stared at the young woman. That's the spirit. You're going to make it through. We all are. The tension that had been building over the last few days seemed to hit its peak in this moment. The crew was close now, closer than they had ever been to the heart of their mission. Yet, even as they prepared for launch, they each carried a deep emotional weight, personal stories, unresolved grief, and the constant question of whether they would ever return. Inside the Vanguard, Ethan stood before the crew, offering a final moment of quiet before they embarked on the mission. The crew members gathered around the table, eyes fixed on their commander. Once we launch, there's no turning back, Ethan said, his voice steady but carrying a quiet resolve. We've trained for this, but the real battle begins now. Keep your heads cool, your hearts focused. We have a galaxy to save. Bonner, Sarah, and the rest of the crew stood silently, each lost in their thoughts. The weight of the mission pressed heavily on their minds, but their resolve remained unbroken. The emotional tension reached its peak as Bonner looked down at a small, weathered photograph in his hand. It was a picture of his wife and daughter, taken just before the alien invasion had shattered his world. The image was faded, edges curled with age, but it still held the memory of happier times. Sarah, standing nearby, ran her fingers over the necklace that had once belonged to her brother. It was a small silver pendant shaped like a star, something he had given her before his death. As she held it in her palm, she whispered softly, "For you, Jason, I'll make sure no one else has to go through what we did." The final moments before launch were filled with these quiet acts of remembrance, small, personal rituals that connected the crew to their lost loved ones. They weren't just fighting for the galaxy anymore. They were fighting for the people they had lost, and for those they hoped to save. With a final, solemn nod from Ethan, the team strapped themselves into their seats. The Vanguard slowly powered up, its engines humming to life. The crew was ready, but the true test lay ahead. Would humanity's courage be enough to overcome the odds? The Vanguard shuddered as it plunged into hyperspace, the stars outside stretching into long white streaks, distorting and blending into one continuous line. The jump into hyperspace was always an exhilarating and dangerous experience, one that tested the mental and physical resilience of everyone aboard. As the ship shot through the fabric of space, time itself seemed to stretch and bend, a sensation both exhilarating and unnerving. But inside the ship, the crew was silent, each of them lost in their thoughts, their minds focused on the task ahead. Commander Ethan Drake stood in the cockpit, his eyes glued to the monitor as the vast emptiness of space unfolded before them. He could feel the pressure of the mission bearing down on him, the weight of responsibility almost unbearable. There were no second chances. Failure was not an option. Behind him, Bonner, Sarah, and the rest of the crew were preparing for what lay ahead. The asteroid field loomed before them, a deadly maze of jagged rocks and debris, each one a potential obstacle to their mission. The Vanguard glided toward the field, its engines humming steadily as the crew braced for the challenges ahead. The viewports of the spacecraft flickered with the glow of distant stars, the cosmic beauty of the universe laid out in front of them. Yet there was an undeniable sense of danger in the air. The rogue star, a monstrous force of nature, was growing closer with every passing moment. The light from it bathed the ship in an eerie glow, casting long shadows over the crew as they prepared for the unknown. "It's coming up fast," Sarah said, her voice tense as she looked out at the approaching asteroid field. Ethan nodded. "We have to navigate through this quickly. The longer we take, the more vulnerable we become." As the Vanguard entered the field, the crew's hands flew over controls, expertly maneuvering the ship through the chaotic mass of asteroids. The ship jolted as it narrowly avoided a massive rock, the sound of the impact shaking through the hull. The crew held their breath as they shot past another asteroid, barely missing its sharp edges. The tension in the air was thick, every movement calculated and deliberate. Bonner stood beside Sarah, his sharp eyes scanning the sensor readouts. His face was grim, but he had no doubt that they could make it through. He had faced worse odds in his career, but this was something else. He could sense the pressure mounting, not just for himself, but for everyone on board. He could see it in their eyes. Fear, uncertainty. The ship swerved to the side as another asteroid zoomed by, too close for comfort. The crew held their breath again, their hearts racing. Sweat trickled down Bonner's forehead, but he remained focused. They were still alive. Suddenly, the sensors beeped loudly. Bonner's eyes snapped to the screen. It wasn't just the asteroid field they had to worry about. "Drones," he muttered under his breath. Sarah looked up, her expression hardening. "Galactic Council drones." The Vanguard's monitors flickered as a swarm of robotic drones appeared on their sensors, closing in fast. These AI-controlled machines were sent by the Galactic Council, and their mission was clear: stop the humans from reaching the rogue star at all costs. The crew scrambled to respond. The Vanguard's cloaking devices flickered to life, the ship blending seamlessly into the background of space, its presence nearly undetectable. It was humanity's only hope of getting through without being detected by enemy patrols. "Hold steady," Ethan's voice rang out, calm but commanding. "Stay quiet. We can't afford to make any noise." The ship's cloaking systems were their best defense, but Bonner knew the drones were smart, too smart. They wouldn't be fooled for long. "Incoming," Sarah shouted, her voice full of urgency. She barely had time to react as a drone shot past the Vanguard, its weapons firing at the ship's cloaked position. The energy blasts lit up the space around them, missing by mere inches. The crew braced themselves for impact. But Ethan was already giving orders. "Weapons, now." Bonner and Sarah rushed to their stations. The ship's AI-powered weapons systems came to life, responding to their commands with rapid precision. Bonner fired first, the cannon unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that collided with one of the drones. It exploded in a flash of light, its parts scattering into the void of space. But the rest of the drones were closing in fast, and they were relentless. One by one, they engaged the vanguard, their laser beams slicing through space, narrowly missing the ship as it danced around debris and dodged the incoming attacks. "Keep firing. We need to take them down," Bonner growled, his grip tightening on the controls. Sarah, her face set with determination, began firing the ship's eye-powered turrets, targeting the drones with deadly precision. Each shot was calculated, each movement deliberate. But the drones kept coming, overwhelming them with their numbers and speed. The battle intensified as more drones joined the fray. The Vanguard's crew was on edge, their hearts racing as the ship rocked with every near miss. The stakes had never been higher. They had to survive this to reach the rogue star. There was no turning back. As Bonner fought to keep the ship steady, the tension among the crew began to rise. They had been through close calls before, but this was different. The pressure was mounting, and with each passing second, their chances of making it through the asteroid field grew slimmer. "Come on, people," Ethan shouted, his voice laced with authority. "We can do this. Focus." But despite Ethan's words, cracks were starting to show. The crew's resolve was beginning to falter. Fear and exhaustion were taking their toll. "Why are we still doing this?" Sarah snapped, her frustration boiling over. "We're going to die out here." This was a mistake. Bonner, ever the soldier, stood tall. "We don't have the luxury of second-guessing ourselves now. We've come too far." "You're right," Sarah muttered, clenching her fists. I don't know how much longer I can hold on." Bonner stepped forward, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Listen to me. We're human. We're not going to back down. Not now. Not ever." The tension in the air thickened as Sarah nodded, biting her lip. She had to believe. They all had to believe. Just as the crew was beginning to doubt themselves, Ethan's voice rang out, loud and clear, silencing the muttering that had started to take hold. "Listen up, everyone," he said, his voice full of steel. "We are humanity's last hope. We've trained for this. We have the skills, the technology, and the will to survive. We don't stop. Not here. Not now." His words cut through the fear like a knife, and the crew fell silent, each of them drawing strength from his unyielding resolve. They were in this together, and together they would survive. Bonner turned back to the controls, his focus returning. The Vanguard's engines roared as the ship darted and weaved through the asteroid field, narrowly avoiding impacts. The drones were still in pursuit, but Bonner knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They had to reach the rogue star. The Vanguard shook violently, its metal hull groaning under the intense forces of the gravitational anomaly they had just entered. The ship's systems flickered on and off, alarms blaring throughout the ship. The crew braced themselves as the chaotic tremors rocked their bodies. Ethan's voice cut through the panic, calm and commanding. "Hold tight. Brace for impact." But it was too late. The Vanguard was being pulled into the anomaly's pull, its trajectory uncontrollable. The crew could feel the gravitational force pushing them inward, closer to the heart of the phenomenon. In the control room, Bonner gritted his teeth, eyes fixed on the monitors. The fusion bomb, their only hope for diverting the rogue star, was still in place, but it was now at risk. The detonation system, delicate and intricate, had been damaged in the chaos. Every passing second seemed to stretch into an eternity. "Bonner, get to the bomb chamber," Ethan ordered, his voice steady, despite the shaking. "We need to make repairs. Now." Bonner didn't hesitate. He sprinted from the cockpit, his footsteps echoing in the corridors of the Vanguard as the ship's systems whined and flickered. As he reached the bomb chamber, Sarah was already there, her hands frantically working on the damaged systems. "This is bad, Bonner," Sarah said, her voice tight with stress. "The detonation mechanism is completely fried. We can't fix this in time." Bonner's heart sank as he took in the sight. The bomb was their last hope. If they didn't get it working, The rogue star would collide with the planet, destroying everything in its path. They didn't have much time. "I'll do it." Ethan's voice crackled through their comms, calm and final. "Ethan." "No," Bonner protested, his voice thick with panic. He ran toward the communication panel, trying to make contact with their commander. "I'm the only one who can do it. You've all done enough," Ethan said, cutting through the air like a blade. "I'm going to manually release the bomb. You need to get out of here." Bonner froze. He knew what Ethan meant. If he manually released the bomb, there was no coming back. The detonation would cause a massive explosion, one that would obliterate everything in its path. Ethan was sacrificing himself to save the rest of them. "No, Ethan, there has to be another way," Bonner said desperately. "We can still fix it. We can still save you." But Ethan's tone was resolute. "I've made my peace with it, Bonner. I'll do whatever it takes to stop this star." Ethan's voice grew softer, filled with a quiet determination that sent a chill down Bonner's spine. "You've all been amazing. You've fought for this mission like no one else would. I trust you to carry on the fight, to make sure humanity survives, no matter what." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she listened to Ethan's words. She was speechless, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Bonner gripped the comm panel harder, his knuckles white. "We can't lose you, Ethan. You're our commander. You're everything to this mission," Bonner said, his voice shaking. But Ethan's voice was already softer, almost a whisper now. "You've always had the heart of a soldier, Bonner. And Sarah, you're stronger than you think. You both have the strength to lead after I'm gone. But this is my mission to end. It's the only way." Ethan's words hit like a hammer. Bonner wanted to argue, to find another way. But deep down, he knew. The rogue star was coming, and they didn't have time. They had no other choice. With a heavy heart, Bonner took a step back. "I'll make sure you're remembered, Ethan. Always." "I don't need glory, Bonner," Ethan replied, his voice steady, even though the weight of the decision pressed on him like a mountain. "I just need you to win this fight. That's all that matters." Ethan's final words hung in the air, heavy with the finality of his decision. The comms went silent as he boarded the bomb chamber. The Vanguard's crew stood there, silent, frozen in the unbearable tension. Outside the ship, the rogue star continued its path toward destruction, still too far to stop, but closing in with every second. They had run out of time. Ethan stepped into the chamber, the door closing behind him with a heavy hiss. His movements were precise, every motion a testament to his years of training and his deep commitment to the mission. His hands, trembling slightly, reached for the manual release mechanism, the only option left. Bonner and Sarah were left to watch through the control room's monitors, helpless. The countdown on the screen was ticking down, each second more precious than the last. Ethan placed his hand on the release lever, his face set with a finality that made it clear there was no turning back. He looked one last time at the camera in front of him, and his eyes, filled with resolve, met theirs. "I'll see you on the other side," he said quietly, as he pulled the lever. The chamber door opened, and the fusion bomb, with its terrifying power, was released into the void of space. A massive explosion ripped through the vacuum of space, sending shockwaves across the stars. The Vanguard rocked violently as the energy pulse sent a wave through the ship. Outside, the rogue star shuddered as it began to change course, slowly diverted by the blast of the fusion bomb. The planet's destruction was halted, the inevitable catastrophe averted. But it was at a terrible cost. The Vanguard's crew watched in stunned silence as the explosion unfolded, knowing what they had lost. Ethan Drake had given everything to save them, to save the galaxy. The shockwave from the bomb's detonation illuminated the vast darkness of space, casting a blinding light across the heavens. Bonner turned away from the screen, his face pale as he absorbed the gravity of what had just happened. His throat was tight, and his heart ached with the loss of their commander, their friend. Sarah stood next to him, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The pain of their loss was too great for words. Ethan had sacrificed himself to ensure humanity's survival. And now, the crew of the Vanguard would have to carry on, honoring his memory, fighting the battle he had started. But as they looked out into the vastness of space, they knew one thing for certain. Ethan Drake would never be forgotten. The massive explosion still echoed across the vast emptiness of space. The fusion bomb had successfully diverted the rogue star, saving the alien world that had been on the brink of annihilation. The star's trajectory had changed, and now, instead of heading toward the planet, it was slowly veering off into the unknown corners of the galaxy. The planet's surface, once doomed to be consumed by the star, now stood untouched, its future uncertain but safe for now. Back aboard the Vanguard, the crew stared at the monitors, silent and solemn. The deed had been done. Ethan Drake, their commander and friend, had given his life for the mission, for the survival of countless beings across the galaxy. But even in the face of such an incredible sacrifice, the ship's crew knew one thing for certain. They had succeeded. The impossible had been achieved. In the heart of the Galactic Council's chambers, the high-ranking alien leaders gathered around a massive holo display. Their eyes were wide with disbelief as they watched the events unfold on their screens. They had all seen the explosion, the violent shockwave of the fusion bomb ripping through space, and the sudden redirection of the rogue star. It was something no one, not even the most brilliant of their minds, had expected. "Unbelievable," muttered one of the leaders, an alien species with long, flowing tendrils and eyes that shimmered like starlight. They actually did it. The others, usually so confident in their superiority, stood speechless, their jaws clenched, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Humanity, considered nothing more than a primitive species, a simple race with no place in the grand scheme of galactic politics, had just pulled off a feat that even the most advanced species of the Council couldn't accomplish. Did we just witness the impossible? Another leader asked, their voice barely a whisper. "Indeed," replied the first leader. "We have all underestimated them. It is clear now that Earth is a force to be reckoned with." As the Galactic Council convened to discuss the implications of this unprecedented victory, their leaders were forced to confront a hard truth. They had greatly misjudged humanity. The Council, for centuries, had seen humans as a primitive, insignificant species. They had been dismissed, mocked, and belittled by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Yet in this moment, it was clear that humanity had not only risen to the challenge, but had outdone all expectations. Meanwhile, back on Earth, news of the victory spread like wildfire. The world was stunned as reports flooded in. The Vanguard's mission had been a success, but the cost had been high. Ethan Drake, Bonner, Sarah, and the rest of the crew had made the ultimate sacrifice for the good of the galaxy. As the news reached military leaders and civilians alike, a mix of emotions spread across the planet. Joy for the victory, sorrow for the fallen, and pride in the courage of the humans who had faced the impossible and triumphed. On Earth's military command center, high-ranking officials gathered around a massive screen, their faces grim as they watched the footage from the Vanguard. The room was silent except for the hum of the monitors and the occasional sound of someone wiping away a tear. General Markson, the commander of Earth's military, stood at the forefront of the group, his expression unreadable. "Ethan Drake did it," General Markson said softly, his voice filled with reverence. "He and his crew saved an entire planet, at the cost of their lives." The room remained silent. Every single person present understood the enormity of what had been achieved, but they also understood the loss. Ethan had given everything. So had Bonner. So had Sarah. "We honor their sacrifice," General Markson continued, "and we will ensure that they are remembered. This victory belongs to them." Outside the military command center, celebrations began. People took to the streets in joyous crowds, waving Earth's flags and chanting the names of the fallen heroes. The news of the victory spread to every corner of the world, and soon, Earth was united in a single collective emotion: pride. The human race had stood against overwhelming odds, against a galaxy of more powerful, more advanced civilizations, and had triumphed. But even in the face of such widespread celebration, there was an undercurrent of sorrow. People mourned the loss of the crew, their friends, family members, and loved ones who had given everything. There would be no parade for Ethan Drake, no ticker tape celebration for Bonner or Sarah. Their victory would never be fully celebrated without acknowledging the price that had been paid. Across the planet, families of the fallen soldiers gathered in private moments of grief. Bonner's parents sat quietly in their home, staring at a picture of their son, the photo a reminder of the life he had lost. They had always known that their son was strong, courageous, and willing to fight for the greater good. But they had never imagined this day would come, when they would learn of his final mission, his final moments. It was a pain that couldn't be expressed in words, a wound too deep to ever fully heal. Sarah's parents stood at the window, watching the celebrations outside, but they didn't share in the joy. Their daughter, who had been so full of promise, had been taken from them in the blink of an eye. Her brother, whose death had driven her to enlist in the first place, would never know the full extent of her bravery. The pride they felt for her sacrifice was mixed with a heavy weight of grief. They would never see their daughter again. As these families grieved, the message of humanity's triumph spread. The whole galaxy was now aware of what humans had done. The Galactic Council, once so dismissive, was now forced to reevaluate its view of the human race. The very beings who had once mocked humanity now watched in awe and fear. Humanity had proven itself capable of accomplishing the impossible, of standing against the most powerful forces in the galaxy and emerging victorious. Back in the council chambers, the discussion was heated. "What do we do now?" asked one of the leaders, an alien species with scales that shimmered like glass. "The humans have shown us that they are not to be underestimated," another leader replied. "We may have misjudged them, but it's clear now that we cannot simply ignore them. They are no longer just an insignificant race. They are a new power, one that could change the balance of the galaxy." The other leaders nodded, some reluctantly, others with a growing sense of respect. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council saw humanity in a new light, not as weak, primitive beings, but as powerful, determined, and capable of achieving the impossible. "We need to reconsider our approach," the first leader said. "The time for underestimating humanity is over. We must prepare for the future." Back on Earth, the legacy of Ethan Drake and the crew of the Vanguard was already beginning to take shape. Statues would be erected in their honor. Books and documentaries would be made, recounting their incredible journey and sacrifice. Their names would be immortalized in history, and as the galaxy watched, humanity's resolve remained unshaken. Earth had faced a threat greater than anything it had ever known, and it had triumphed. The message was clear. Humanity, the underdog, was no longer the galaxy's punching bag. It had proven its worth, and it had earned its place among the stars. The Galactic Council had never been known for its humility. For centuries, it had looked down on younger civilizations, seeing them as nothing more than fleeting sparks in the vast cosmos. The human race, particularly, had been regarded with condescension and disdain. Earth, once thought of as a weak, primitive planet, had now proven itself to be a powerful force, one that could not be ignored. It was in this atmosphere of shifting power that the Galactic Council, once so dismissive of humanity, found itself reconsidering everything. The Vanguard mission, and the bravery of the humans who had sacrificed so much, had forced a dramatic change in their outlook. No longer were humans seen as inferior beings, but as a critical ally in the ever-changing balance of the galaxy. The alliance that formed between Earth and the Council was nothing short of revolutionary. It began with a quiet meeting behind closed doors. The leaders of the Galactic Council, those who had once scoffed at Earth, now had to face the undeniable truth. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, and their failure to recognize Earth's potential had nearly cost them dearly. The Galactic Council had to acknowledge that humanity's courage, ingenuity, and willpower were qualities that no other species in the galaxy could match. And so, an olive branch was extended. In the months following the victory, Earth's standing in the galaxy changed dramatically. The once dismissed planet, isolated and small, was now viewed as an essential partner to the Council. Strategic alliances were forged, and Earth's military might was recognized as a force to be reckoned with. The humans who had once been pushed to the fringes of galactic politics now found themselves at the center of interstellar conversations, their input sought after in the Council's decisions. The moment was historic. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Back on Earth, the world was forever changed. News of the victory spread quickly, but it wasn't just the victory itself that captured people's hearts. It was the message behind it. The courage, the sacrifice, and the unity that humanity had shown in the face of overwhelming odds had become a rallying cry for every nation, every culture, and every person on the planet. The mission had transcended politics, becoming a symbol of what could be achieved when humanity stood together. The future looked brighter, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. In the midst of this new chapter for Earth, there were moments of quiet reflection, moments to remember those who had given their lives for the greater good. Ethan, Drake, Bonner, Sarah, and the rest of the crew were gone, but their legacy lived on in the hearts of those who knew them. Their courage had inspired an entire generation, and their sacrifice had paved the way for a new era. One such moment of reflection came in the peaceful quiet of a sun-drenched park on Earth. Ethan's wife, Mary, stood before a simple stone monument, a memorial to her husband and his brave team. It was a serene place, a tribute to their courage and sacrifice. As she placed a single white flower on the monument, her thoughts were with Ethan, with all that he had given to ensure a future for everyone. Tears glistened in her eyes, but there was also a sense of pride. Ethan had always believed in humanity's potential. He had never doubted that Earth could make a difference in the galaxy, even when no one else believed it. And now she stood here, looking at the names of the crew carved into the stone, knowing that their mission had been a success, that they had accomplished the impossible. Mary whispered quietly, "You did it, Ethan. You proved them all wrong." She turned away from the memorial, her heart full of both sorrow and hope. The world had changed, and so had she. The pain of losing Ethan would never fully go away, but it was tempered by the knowledge that he had not died in vain. His legacy, and the legacy of his team, would live on for generations. Meanwhile, in the heart of the galaxy, another memorial was being established, this one on a world far removed from Earth, the Galactic Hall of Heroes, a place where the bravest and most heroic warriors of the galaxy were commemorated, was about to welcome a new name. Sarah's brother's necklace, a simple but powerful reminder of her brother's sacrifice, now sat in a place of honor, displayed in a golden case for all to see. The necklace had become a symbol of Earth's determination and its willingness to fight for the greater good. In the Hall of Heroes, the galaxy's greatest warriors were remembered, those who had fought against tyranny, against oppressive forces, and against impossible odds. Now, alongside the names of long-remembered heroes, humanity's story would be forever etched in history. As the necklace was placed in the hall, the alien species who had once ridiculed humanity watched with reverence. They could no longer deny the courage and strength of the human race. The galaxy had witnessed the power of their unity, and now it would remember it forever. On Earth, the celebrations continued. Streets were lined with flags, and people from all walks of life gathered to honor the fallen heroes. Children ran through the streets, their voices filled with laughter and joy, while the older generation looked on, proud of what had been accomplished. The memories of the battle, of the sacrifice, were fresh, but there was also a palpable sense of hope in the air. The stars above, once distant and cold, now felt closer. The galaxy no longer seemed like an unreachable expanse, but a vast community, one in which Earth had a crucial role to play. The people of Earth had proved themselves, and now they stood as equals to the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. It was an incredible moment. Humanity had not only survived, but had triumphed. The future was open, filled with new possibilities, new relationships, and new challenges to overcome. As Earth celebrated, the galaxy slowly began to rebuild. The war, the chaos, the uncertainty, it was all part of the past now. With the rogue star averted and the threat of destruction behind them, the galactic powers began to regroup, drawing lessons from the events that had transpired. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of arrogance and superiority, had been forced to acknowledge its own flaws. The new alliance with Earth was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where all species would have to consider the power of unity, courage, and cooperation. But while the galaxy slowly healed, the message that humanity had sent out was clear. They were no longer the weak, helpless species they had once been. Earth had proven its worth, and the galaxy would never forget that. The final scene of humanity's triumph was one of hope. The camera zoomed out from Earth's surface, where peaceful cities flourished and where the stars above twinkled brightly. In the distance, the Earth's symbol, a shining star, glimmered in the vastness of space. It was a beacon of hope, a reminder that, no matter the odds, humanity could rise above them and triumph. In the years to come, Earth would play a pivotal role in the galaxy. Its influence would grow, and its story would inspire countless others to stand tall in the face of adversity. The age of Earth's isolation was over. A new dawn had arrived, and the galaxy, once divided and wary of humanity, now stood united with Earth at its heart.